Welcome back to Accreditation Unlocked. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Clough, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that every institution encounters eventually. That moment when your accreditation finding letter arrives. You know the feeling. You open your email from the accreditor, and your heart skips a beat, and you scroll through the pages wondering, how bad is it? But no matter what's inside, that letter represents more than just findings. It's a chance to strengthen your systems, refine your documentation, and reaffirm your institution's commitment to continuous improvement. This episode, From Finding to Fixes, Rapid Response Strategies, is all about what to do the week you receive that findings letter. We'll walk you through a hands-on practical framework for how to triage your findings, plan and prioritize your actions, communicate clearly, and document effectively. If you've ever wondered how to go from reaction to resolution, this episode will guide you step by step through the process. So let's begin with the first step, understanding what's actually in your findings letter. Understanding the findings letter. The first rule when you receive your findings letter is simple. Don't react. Analyze. The instinct is to go into crisis mode. You start to think about what to fix, who to call, and what the accreditor might say next. But that's not your job in the first 48 hours. Your goal right now is to understand exactly what's being said and why. Every findings letter is a detailed diagnostic snapshot. It tells you what the accreditor saw, what evidence they reviewed, and where they believe your institution can improve or is out of compliance. Start by reading the letter multiple times. The first time, you're reading it emotionally. You're processing it. The second time, you're reading it for patterns. By the third read, you begin to see what the accreditor is truly communicating. Then, sort each item in the letter into one of three basic categories. The first is recommendations. These are suggestions for improvement, not compliance failures. The second is areas of concern or inconsistency. These are findings that suggest weaknesses in documentation or follow-through. The third category is noncompliance. These are the most serious and require immediate corrective action. Finally, note any findings that are tied to federal or regulatory standards, especially anything related to student outcomes, consumer disclosures, or financial aid reporting. These usually carry additional urgency. Once you've sorted everything out, summarize it in writing. Create a simple list of each finding, the standard it references, the department or unit it affects, and your initial thoughts on what may need to be done. That list will serve as your map for the coming weeks. I've worked with institutions that jumped straight into writing responses before they even understood what the accreditor was actually asking for. The most successful teams slow down at the start. They get organized, interpret the findings accurately, and then act with precision. Those first 48 hours set the tone for everything that follows. Now that you've unpacked the findings, it's time to decide on what needs attention first. That's where triage and prioritization come in. Triage and prioritization. When your finding letter arrives, it's easy to feel like everything is urgent, but not all findings are created equal. Some require immediate correction, while others are opportunities for enhancement. The key is to separate what's urgent from what's simply important. I recommend classifying each findings into one of three levels. The first level is urgent and high risk. These are the findings that pose a compliance issue, especially those linked to federal requirements, licensure, or student outcomes. These need immediate attention and often a short turnaround for response. The second level is important but not critical. These findings may relate to process, assessment practices, or documentation consistency. They require thoughtful action but not necessarily emergency level response. The third level is lower risk. Things like minor inconsistencies, outdated policies, or area where additional clarification will suffice. These can often be integrated into your ongoing improvement cycle. Once you identified which findings fall into each level, assign ownership. Decide which department, team, or leader will take the lead on each issue. You don't need to reinvent your organizational structure. Just use what already exists. Your Institutional Effectiveness Committee, Accreditation Steering Committee, or Academic Council are all logical places to assign responsibility. After that, communicate clearly. Send a brief internal update summarizing the findings and priorities. For example, you might say, "We received 8 findings. 2 require immediate action by the Academic Affairs Committee. 3 involve documentation updates, and 3 will be integrated into our continuous improvement plan." That kind of simple, organized communication reassures people that leadership is organized, that there's a plan, and that accreditation is being handled systematically rather than reactively. Leadership in the first week after receiving findings is critical. The team takes its cue from you. Your calm, structured approach helps everyone focus on solutions rather than panic. Once your priorities are clear and ownership is assigned, it's time to build an actionable plan. Let's move into how to turn findings into focused, achievable improvement projects. Building the action plan. Now that your triage is done, the next step is to turn those findings into concrete, actionable initiatives. The best way to do that is using the SMART framework: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For each finding, identify 3 key elements: the root cause, the corrective action, and the preventative action. Let's start with the root cause. Ask yourself why the issue occurred. Was there a missing process? Was it inconsistent implementation? Was oversight lacking? Understanding the why behind the findings prevents quick fixes that don't last. Next, identify the corrective action, the immediate step that will bring your institution into compliance. For example, if the finding says that faculty credential documentation was inconsistent, your corrective action might be to centralize faculty records in one system and audit them for completeness. Finally, define the preventative action. What will ensure that this doesn't happen again? Maybe it's updating the faculty credential policy, training department chairs, or setting up a biannual file review schedule. Each of these actions should have a responsible person or department, a clear deadline, and an identified way to verify completion, whether it's a report, an audit log, or meeting minutes showing the change was implemented. Think of your action plan like a project management document, not a memo. Each item needs an owner, a timeline, and evidence. When the next review comes, you don't want to just say, "We fixed it." You want to show how you fixed it and how you're maintaining it. And here's a key point. Integrate your corrective actions into systems you already use. Don't build a new structure just for accreditation. If your institution has a strategic plan, connect each action to a relevant goal. If you have a continuous improvement dashboard or annual assessment report, embed your corrective action there. That alignment helps to ensure the fixes are sustainable and visible, not temporary reactions that fade once the accreditor moves on. With your action plan mapped out, your next move is communication, because even the best plan fails if no one knows what's happening. Communication and coordination. Communication during the findings response period can make or break your success. It's not just about managing tasks. It's about managing confidence, clarity, and trust. Start with your internal communication. Be transparent and constructive when you share findings with your faculty, staff, and leadership. A good message might sound like this. We've received valuable feedback from our accreditor identifying areas where we can strengthen our processes and documentation. This feedback is part of our ongoing effort to continuously improve. That tone communicates professionalism and progress rather than alarm. When sharing internally, focus not only on what needs improvement, but also on what went well. Highlight the standards where the institution met or exceeded expectations. Accreditation should always be framed as a process of validation and growth. Next, establish a meeting rhythm. For the first 60 days after receiving the findings, I recommend weekly progress meetings to track updates and remove roadblocks. After that, monthly meetings are usually enough until all items are resolved. If any of your findings affect external stakeholders, such as students, clinical partners, or the public, prepare a coordinated communication strategy. Be honest but measured. If public reporting is required, work with your marketing or communications office to ensure that the tone is factual and confident. When institutions own their story, they build trust. Accreditation findings aren't a sign of failure. They're evidence that you're engaged in a continuous review and self-assessment. And one last point here. Visibility is powerful. Even a simple visual summary, like a progress chart showing how many findings are complete, in progress, or under review, can motivate your team and reassure your leadership. Once communication is underway and people are aligned, it's time to talk about the next step. Documenting everything you do so your improvements can be verified later. Documenting the response. In accreditation, documentation is everything. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. That's the simple truth. Start by creating a structured way to organize your materials. Build a clear folder system, digital or physical, that mirrors your finding list. Each finding should have its own space where you collect relevant policies, data, meeting minutes, and evidence of completion. Be consistent in how you name your files. Use simple, descriptive titles that tell the story at a glance. For example, Standard 2, Faculty Credentials, Action Plan Update, January 2026. That might sound tedious, but when you're preparing your follow-up report, clear naming conventions save hours of time. Assign one person, usually from institutional effectiveness or accreditation, to be the documentation manager. This person ensures version control, accuracy, and completeness. Multiple versions of the same file scattered across departments are a recipe for confusion. As you gather your materials, remember that you need two kinds of evidence. Process evidence shows what you did, such as updated policies, new forms, or meeting notes. Outcome evidence shows that it worked, things like assessment results, audit findings, or data demonstrating improvement. Documentation isn't just about compliance. It's about telling your improvement story. A well-organized response folder should read like a narrative. Here's what we found, here's what we did, and here's how it made us better. Use whatever technology works best for your institution. Whether it's SharePoint, Google Drive, or an accreditation management system, the goal is clarity and accessibility, not complexity. With your documentation underway, you're ready for the final phase, turning your quick fixes into long-term sustainable improvement. From fixes to continuous improvement. Responding to findings isn't just about solving problems. It's about learning from them. Once you've addressed your findings, take some time to close the loop. Start by documenting the changes you made, update the policies, revise the forms, record the meeting notes, and file the new procedures. Then, measure the impact. Did the corrective action actually work? Are the new processes being followed? Is the outcome data improving? Next, reflect as a team. Hold a debrief meeting with the departments involved. Ask what worked well and what challenges you faced. Capture those lessons for the next time, because there will always be a next time. Then, institutionalize what you've learned. Integrate the new processes into your regular operations so they don't disappear after the follow-up report is submitted. Train staff on the new procedures. Add them to your onboarding materials. Make them part of your annual assessment or strategic planning cycle. And don't forget to celebrate. Recognize the individuals and departments that contributed to the improvements. A simple thank you in a meeting or an acknowledgement in a newsletter helps maintain motivation and reinforces that accreditation is everyone's job. I like to tell institutions that findings are tuition, the cost of learning and growth. When you take what you learn from those findings and apply it to strengthen your systems, you transform a temporary setback into institutional progress. You might even consider developing a simple findings dashboard, a one-page document that shows each finding, the action taken, and the result. That transparency communicates accountability and demonstrates to both internal and external audiences that your institution doesn't just fix problems, it learns from them. Let's wrap up by reviewing the full framework, the 5 steps to move from findings to fixes. The Rapid Response Framework. Here's a quick recap of everything we covered today, what I call the Findings to Fixes framework. Step 1 is analyze. Read the findings letter carefully and separate emotion from fact. Clarify what's being asked of you. Step 2 is triage. Prioritize based on urgency and compliance risk. Decide what needs to be done now, what can be integrated later, and who is responsible. Step 3 is plan. Build a smart action plan that defines root causes, corrective actions, and preventative measures. Assign owners, set deadlines, and describe how completion will be verified. Step 4 is communicate. Keep everyone in the loop, from faculty to leadership. Own the story, share progress, and build confidence through transparency. And step 5 is document. Capture every step of your progress, organize your evidence, maintain version control, and tell your improvement story with clarity and accuracy. Follow these 5 steps, and you will not only navigate your findings effectively, you'll strengthen your institution's capacity for continuous improvement. When that finding letter arrives, it's easy to see it as criticism, but in reality, it's a roadmap, a set of directions pointing you towards stronger systems and better outcomes. As we close today's episode, I want you to remember this. Findings are not failures. They're opportunities to improve, to learn, and to grow. When you receive that letter, don't panic. Take a breath, gather your team, start moving from findings to fixes with structure and confidence. Because in accreditation, how you respond is every bit as important as what was found. If you'd like a free downloadable version of the Finding to Fixes action matrix I mentioned today, visit accreditationcollaborative.com for more information. You can use it to jumpstart your institution's response process. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How does your institution manage its findings? What strategies have worked best for you? Share your experiences on LinkedIn or reach out through the Accreditation Collaborative website. Thank you for listening to Accreditation Unlocked. Until next time, I'm Dr. Ken Clough, helping you turn compliance into continuous improvement.